A look at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers. I have with me in the studio Chartered Accountant and Public Affairs Analyst Sesan Okunade and CEO CKN News, Kehinde Nwandu. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
It's Friday.
Yeah. Yes, thank God it's Friday. You're already in the mood, obviously.
I'm in the mood already.
All right, let's head straight to the papers now. And I begin with the News Direct 2023. Can President backs Southeast for President? That's the Christian Association of Nigeria there. And we'll move to the Blueprint. Buhari orders probe of NDDC activities. We are disappointed with Commission's operations. Governors, Senate queries 651 billion naira water hyacinth clearing contract. And to the front page of the Daily Trust, federal government to sink fresh 915 billion naira loan into power sector. Borrowing not yielding results, experts discuss. Nigeria's external debt rises to 25.7 trillion naira. To the Vanguard now, federal government looking at new tax on soft drinks. Finance minister to boost non-oil revenue as IMF recommends 15% tax to GDP ratio from 6%. Interesting. All right, and to the front page of the Nation now. Federal government Labour seal new minimum wage agreement. TUC, it's win-win. We'll be looking at that story shortly. And finally, on the front page of The Guardian, states owing 4 trillion naira in domestic debts. Lagos, we have 542.231 billion naira. Delta, 223.442 billion naira. Rivers, 225. Jigawa, 38.227 billion naira. Anambra, 33 billion naira. Yobe, 26 billion naira. But gentlemen, let's talk about this issue of minimum wage that has been in the news after 3 days of back and forth discussions. Finally, we have an agreement between Labour and the federal government and the TUC, a faction of organized Labour, is saying it's a win-win. Is that what it is for you, Chris?
Well, to me, it's a win-win situation. One, the impending strike has been shelved. That in itself would have been a big problem to the already deteriorating situation within our economy. My personal opinion is that we could have avoided this. This is avoidable because an agreement is an agreement. Sometime before the election, the federal government reached an agreement with organized labor, which spanned over 7 months or 8 months of discussion and the rest of them. Before they arrived at that, there was negotiation with the Nigerian government forum, there was negotiation with the federal government, even the other stakeholders were involved for them to be able to. Don't forget where it started from. Yes. It started from about 50-something thousand naira, higher than it was far. Then, at the end of it all, the government agreed that they were going to pay. In fact, the president approved that. After the election, the federal government reneged on its promise and decided
to grind the economy to a halt.
That is it. So it was not. But over the years, I've come to realize something. The only language that the government, whether at the state or national level, understand is strike. When you hear that word strike, everybody starts running helter-skelter. Yes, because that was the only language, and the labor are trying to use it adequately. So, but it is the details of the agreement, we've not really gotten into because it was reached this morning. Although I heard that it's about a 5-level stage or level of agreement. So we'll get to see. And
grade level 7, I have that here. So, grade level 7, we have 23.2%. Grade level 8, 20%. Grade level 9, 19%. Grade level 10 to 14, 16%. And grade level 15 to 17, we have 14%.
Exactly. The problem is not going to be with the federal government. Where we're going to have problems is going to the state government's ability to pay. Most of them couldn't pay the 18,000, so I wonder how they're going to do this.
Before we get there, let's get Sesan's reaction to this now. Is this really a win-win situation, looking at the number of multiple taxation that those workers are going to face? Because the government is even looking at taxing carbonated drinks now.
It's a win-win thing, but we keep telling them it's not about the minimum wage now. It's about the purchasing power. Even if you, as we speak, if the minimum wage is 100,000, it can't take us anywhere. Situation where you have to tax everything, nothing, everything is being taxed. We are going to have telecommunication tax. We're going to have tax on carbonated drink. Very soon they will be taxing the way you walk on the road. They are going to toll the gates. We'll be paying toll gates. And when you accumulate all those things together,
what is left?
Coupled with the fact that you have bad infrastructure, productive hour is going to be zero. Where you're supposed to spend 15 minutes, you are spending 3 hours to drive on the road. Very soon, with the rate at which it's going, they are reducing the lifespan of people day by day. You can imagine you leaving your place and you have to just spend like 40 minutes drive to where you're going, and you're spending 4 hours. You've missed your business appointment. You cannot even meet up with it. You have stressed to your nerves. So you discover that people die. You hear people just moving on the third mainland, and you said they die on the wheel. You can't just explain it. So it's not about the minimum wage. It's what that wages can actually take or pay. Which this
that's why
cannot
there's been advocation for minimum living standard, so to speak.
Let the basic amenities be there for you to be able to.
But it doesn't seem that the NLC has been driving that. All it's looking at is the wage, because in other climes it is said that when there's talks about increment, perhaps 1-2%, because the infrastructure is there. So right now, is it that we are not pushing what we're supposed to be pushing and not making the government accountable to address these issues of infrastructural decay that he mentioned?
Yes, agreed. And don't forget the fact that within Nigerian mentality, once there's an increment, so-called increment in salary, every other thing skyrockets.
Yes.
Everything, the market woman, even your landlord will tell you that that he's going to increase his rent, and the rest of it is just like that. And that is the problem we are facing. And let us also look at it from this point. What is the percentage of those in the public sector compared to the generality of workforce? They are very minimal. So if you increase the salaries of those in the private sector, will they be able to also add to that? So it's a multiple problem. The problem what we need to do is to find ways of driving the economy and making the so-called wages. It's not, to me, they call it minimum wage. To me, I don't know what to call it. The problem is the purchasing powers of Nigeria is dwindling by the day. Even how much is the bag of rice now? Ask yourself.
Over 23,000.
Good. 24. So if somebody that earns 30,000 naira, he buys a bag of rice for 23,000 naira. What is left for him to feed his family?
Let me even shock you. Someone went to the market yesterday and was telling me they need to buy chicken. He said, sir, I got the chicken that used to be like 1,200, was about 1,008. The gizzard. I said, why? They said they closed the border. I said, for Christ's sake, and we are advocating for minimum wage. So if you collect 30,000 as a minimum wage and you buy a bag of rice, the only thing you buy is just fish, and you buy groundnut oil, and that will take you for, so you'll be eating rice every day.
Not the other thing. And it's going to affect, so that is going to affect. So we've not talked about school fees of the kids. You know that the public schools are not even functioning now. So
that is why I said, is this really a win-win situation?
For me, it's nothing to smile about. Sincerely, it's nothing to smile about. We still have a long way to go. And the government is not making issues.
But with the reality in our economy, like the Minister of Labour said, if that increment had been made, wouldn't it grind the economy to a halt? Let's look at the situation.
We should look at also, they're talking about how much are they
cutting cost of governance and all of those.
Look at the president that just came out with a directive now for ministers and head of MDAs and MGGs to cut down if you know the waste within government circle, go and look at the senator. What does the senator earn? Go and look at the auxiliaries of aides. Special advisor, the special assistant, you see a senator having special advisor and special assistants on media over 5, 7, 8, 10. What is he doing with them? They're going to be paid. You know, so let's also look at the waste within government. Look at our budget. Capital, how much are we spending on capital expenditures?
30%?
That is it. So if we are spending just 30% or capital expenditure, then look at what is left. So we are carrying is like an elephant. What Nigeria now is just like an elephant with the legs of an ant. That is the problem we're having. So government should look at waste and look at where we need to curb this instead of taxing and killing Nigerians the more. Nigerians are suffering. It's as if they don't even know what is happening.
They don't
really seem to understand.
They don't really know.
They don't really know. And that is the fact. The Minister of Agriculture came out.
Yes, said that Nigerians
are not hungry.
They said that we have more than enough, that Nigerians are not dying, there's no hunger in Nigeria. Yeah. Is that man living in Nigeria?
I'm sure he's based outside the country.
This is just unfortunate.
But now let's look at the critical issue here, implementation. Like he was rightly mentioning earlier. How should Labour move on now when it comes to implementation? Because we just heard that there are some states which are burdened with debt, and some also cannot even pay the 18,000 naira minimum wage. Now you have an increment. Isn't it time to start looking outside the box?
The issue we have in this country is we just thought for the TUC and the labor force, it's something to celebrate for them.
Yeah.
But for people like us, it's nothing to. Because nobody actually, several states are being owed several months, even with 18,000.
Yeah.
Now you're increasing it to 30,000. Someone that cannot pay 18, how do you expect him to pay 30,000? So it's a critical problem. And this is just the beginning of the problem. By the time federal government carry out disciplinary, of course now, you have to pay arrears and now pay the new one. Definitely you discover that this cannot be agitated. And that's why for people like us, I am not agitating for increase in wages. Put in the basic amenities, put in the basic infrastructure, let things work. Once those things work, who wants to work with the government? Then you can stand on your own, do things for yourself, and make things to be, rather than seeking white-collar job or you're looking for government job. If all those infrastructures are there, you have good power, why do you even as an artisan, if you go to school and you improve on what a welder we do, you definitely make the difference. You go to school as you go and learn fashion designing, definitely you're going to have a touch to it. We are talking of improving entrepreneurship. But there are no infrastructure to actually carry out that.
The ease of doing business has also
It's
been
not
very
just that. You keep tasking and tasking. I heard of a friend that FIRS is just after them. Come and pay this. Come on what? You are killing the people that are actually doing the real business.
And NIMC is coming out with his own that people should pay 5,000 naira to renew it. To
renew some of those things. So you discover that it's not about minimum wage, but do the right thing that will give people. For me, I keep telling the youth, don't seek employment with anyone. Look at what you can use your hands to do. Our forefathers, our fathers, what they did was, most of them didn't go into all this. They did business for themselves.
But they need startup capital and to access loans.
That's what we are saying.
That's
what we are saying.
It's a big challenge.
Put those levels down. Let everybody be able to decide and say, I want to do this for myself and start up. So even if you get the loan, I'm telling you, you are going to regret venturing into it. Absolutely. Because the cost of production, the interest, even the cost of investing in some of those businesses would be killing. So for me, it's nothing to celebrate. Whether it's not a win-win as far as I'm concerned. What Labour should eat the government for is to provide the basic amenities. Let's have good roads. Let's be able to transport goods, go to our village. Some people want to do farming. Transfer those things down. You discover that people make good seedlings out there, bring those things bring them to town. It's difficult. You stay 5 hours, 5 days.
On the road.
Your car, I was driving down this morning. You know, there is a link that they will tell you that in Lagos, you don't avoid pothole. You choose the one you want to enter. So I can imagine what people are spending on their car. So even if I'm earning the so-called increment, I'm returning those things back into those things. But if there are good roads, I can be rest assured that in the next few months...
There's an implication to this, as some have argued. It means if we continue chasing after minimum wage, we are not telling the government, that we can handle things.
Yes, basically, it's true. And that's why my problem with Labour, the current Labour leadership we have, with due all due respect to the president of NLC, my friend, is that they are pursuing what are not necessary. Sincerely, if you decide to ask for an increment in salary, and the same workers you are asking for an increment, whatever they're taking home cannot take them home. because those are supposed to be take-home packages. You cannot take them outside their offices, talk less of taking them home. It's a problem. And a whole lot of, what they should be advocating is challenging the government to provide the basic infrastructure. What are the basic reasons why we elected a government? Is to provide certain amenities for all the citizens, not just the federal government workers or wherever. It's for all the citizens. Now you're talking about, in the United States, for example, let me give you a good example. Taxes, all the so-called taxes. Do you know that you have tax returns?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just came back from the States.
It's
At the end of the year, whatever you've paid, the United States government are going to give you back.
But we don't.
Most of
that doesn't happen here because and that's where
the
people
one
are
that you are
challenged.
paying, the one that you are even
these
paying, are you
taxes.
seeing what they are using it to
What
do?
are they using
What are they
it
using it
for?
for? All the one you've been paying. They are talking of increasing of VAT. They are talking of POS. Now you have to, for every POS, you are going to another transaction that will be 15 naira. You are talking of soft drinks that are going to tax. By the time we know, by the end of this year, they probably start taxing the air we breathe. We won't even be able to walk the street the way we are going. And if these are the kind of things that labor should be championing, not just their personal interest of how much is being increased, how does it affect me as an entrepreneur? How does it affect me? If I cannot have my own local government, I provide my water, I provide my security, I provide my light, even the road. Even when I have problem with my transformer in my own locality,
You come together.
I will come to contribute to pay and even go to. It is a problem. It's a problem.
Yeah.
So we have. It's a multi-personal. The present government has a big challenge, and it's because this is a government that came with so much promises, and they'll be held accountable at the end of it all if they're not able to provide.
All right,
this.
gentlemen, we have to leave it at this point. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
It's time for newspaper review. Of course, we're taking a look at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers. I have with me in the studio chartered accountant and public affairs analyst Sesan Okunade and CEO CKN News Kehinde Nwandu. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so we'll look at the newspapers this morning. The News Direct here says 2023, can President back Southeast for presidency? The blueprint is saying here, Buhari orders probe of NDDC activities. The writer says, we are disappointed with Commission's operations, says governors. Senate queries 65 billion naira water hyacinth clearing contracts. Daily Trust is saying here, federal government to sink fresh 915 billion naira loan into power sector. That's in the Daily Trust. It says here, and the writer says, borrowing not yielding results, as according to experts and discos. Nigeria's external debt rises to 25.7 trillion naira. The Vanguard, it says federal government looking at new tax on soft drinks, according to the finance minister, to boost non-oil revenue as IMF recommends 15% tax to GDP ratio from 6%. The Nation says federal government labor seal new minimum wage agreement. And that's the header in the Nation newspaper. The Guardian is saying states owing 4 trillion naira in domestic debt. Lagos 542.23 billion naira. Delta 223.442 billion naira. Rivers 225.592 billion naira. Jigawa 38.227 billion. Anambra 33.490 billion. And Yobe State 29.990 billion. Of course, we'll stay with the headlines in the Nation, and it's talking about the minimum wage. Federal government labor seal new minimum wage agreement. TUC says it's a win-win. So, Sesan, as an economist now, what's the import of this increment in the minimum wage?
Before we go to the economic side of it, a layman language that didn't go to school. Increase in salary is increase in everything.
Okay.
The woman by the roadside who owns its radio heard that government has added money to the man that is buying something from him. Even with the stock he has with her, the next thing she's going to do is just to put a little thing on it.
Okay.
If we now go to the economic perspective, you are talking about increments in the amount that you're going to take home. But on the basis of calculating your take home, there are expectations of what your expenditure should look like. You now discover that there is no match up. There is an increase for the lower cadre of about 63%, but the expense has actually skyrocketed. the basic amenities, if you look at Abraham Maslow, those things that every human being needs, you cannot even meet it. Talk about food and shelter. Clothing. Foods are crazily expensive. As we speak, we are not yet in December, a bag of rice is over 24,000.
Actually 25,000.
25. Thank you very much. That was as at last week.
Yeah,
so by the time we'll be talking of December, you should be talking of
30,000.
30, 40 something thousand. Yeah. And you're going to buy things to make it happen. We are talking of rice. How about other food ingredients that you're going to make use of? That's one of the Maslow law. Talk about shelter. An average person cannot get a good accommodation. Even if you decide to go to the interiors, you know, if you look at the developed country, part of what people stays in the interior because there are motorable roads for you to come out, where you can drive as far as 40 minutes, 50 minutes, and you get to your place of work. But try it. If you stay, let's take for example, in Lagos, and you work at Ikeja, you stay as far as, take for example, interior of Ikorodu, you need to leave your house as early as 4 in the morning.
Yes, to beat the traffic.
To beat the traffic and be, when you even leave by 4, the average time you get there, it's around, there are places when you go towards evening. So you discover that those are things that we should look out for. Infrastructure development, and not numerical, or we're talking about value in increasing the money, because this that they have done is going to impoverish the people more.
Okay, let's go to Chris now. What are the labor unions supposed, what are they supposed to have done, rather than talk about increments in wages?
I don't have an issue with them asking for increments in wages. Ordinarily, within the labor law, at a particular point in time, there will be some level of increment.
Looking at what he has just spelled out.
That is what I'm saying. What they ought to have been looking at is how to tasking the government to develop the basic infrastructures. That in itself will create more opportunity for people to go into the ease of doing business, sort of. And also, look, he talked about the issue of roads and rest of it. Don't forget, the one critical area that we should be looking at is the power sector.
Okay.
I've not seen Labour say anything about the power sector in Nigeria. If we can solve the issue of power alone, if that's the only thing this present government can achieve, then you can see that a lot of things would have been able to move a step higher.
Rather than talk about the minimum
wage and rest
talk about power instead.
You know, initially I said it's supposed to be a take-home pay. This is a take-home pay that cannot even take you out of your office, because by the time you get out of the office and step to the gate, transportation will be able to take that, and so many other things. So those are the issues we'll be looking at. Then also I'm also looking at it from the point of what is the percentage of those we're looking at here? Those in government sector, those in the public sector, what of those in the private sector, which constitute the bulk of the workforce? What is going to happen to them? You understand what I'm trying to say? So, and there will be astronomical increments in the prices of goods and services. Because just as he said, once anybody, we were talking about what happened when we excluded the rest of them. And the mere fact that somebody here that there's an increment, your landlord is going to increase his rent. He will. Okay. Schools are going to increase the school fees. And so it will be a spiral effect. So what we should be looking at, Labour should be looking at, is that how do we be able to better the life of the people? If we can hold government accountable to do what they were elected to do, irrespective of whatever the increment or no increment, then we are also having issue with taxes. Okay. Now,
there's going to be an increment in taxes
across board, all sorts of taxation.
Let's just hope that Labour stands up to this responsibility and ensure that the present government will do the needful.
We hope so and pray so.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for talking to us on this issue.
Thank you very much.
King, the headlines in Nigerian newspapers. I have with me in the studio chartered accountant and public affairs analyst Sesan Okunade and CEO CKN News, Kehinde Nwandu. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for coming on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you very much.
We'll head straight to the papers now, and I begin with News Direct 2023. Can President backs Southeast for a presidency? To the front page of the blueprint, Buhari orders probe of NDDC activities. We are disappointed with Commission's operations. Governors, Senate queries 665 billion naira water hyacinth clearing contract. On the front page of the Daily Trust, federal government is sink fresh 915 billion naira loan into power sector. Borrowing not yielding result, experts discuss. Nigeria's external debt rises to 25.7 trillion. On the front page of Vanguard, a federal government looking at new tax on soft drinks. Finance Minister to boost non-oil revenue as IMF recommends 15% tax to GDP ratio from 6%. And on the front page of the Nation newspaper, federal government and Labour seal new minimum wage agreement, TUC. It's win-win. To the front page of The Guardian now, states owing 4 trillion naira in domestic debts. We have the states here: Lagos, Delta, Rivers, Jigawa, Anambra, Yobe states there. And on the front page of the Daily Sun, no more wars as federal government Labour strike deal. Workers anxious to receive new pay. And finally, on the front page of this day newspaper, to instill transparency, Buhari orders forensic audit of NDDC operations. Senate probes alleged inflation of agencies' contract to 65 billion naira. We'll go to this story, gentlemen, on the front page of the Vanguard. The federal government is looking at imposing new tax on soft drinks. The finance minister there. Nigerians have had to grapple with so many multiple taxes now, and we are including this. We have increased the value-added tax from 5% to 7.5%, and so many other things are being taxed. We are going to pay tolls on gates. We are going to do this, and now on soft drinks, there will be tax. I wonder how this comes to you, CKN.
It's rather unfortunate that a government that ought to be lessening the burden of the citizen is adding more to it. It reminds me of one of those sayings in the Bible where a particular king son took over from the father, and the people went to him and said, please, try to do something about our burden. Say, well, if my father was caning you with ordinary destiny, you're going to, it's koboko I'm going to use on you this time around. And that is the problem we are having, because we are not even thinking of how we can be able to solve the present problem that the average Nigerian is going through.
We just increased salaries.
With
or
salary,
wages.
which of the wages? The wages that cannot take you home. That is the problem we're having. The government is not thinking of, let me ask you, what is the duty of government to the people? Why do we elect government? We elect government so that they can be able to provide basic amenities. There are certain things in life that are supposed to be free, that your government is supposed to do for you.
But aren't we supposed to pay taxes?
We are supposed to pay taxes. But if paying taxes does not necessarily mean that you should kill me with taxes. Because practically everything, there's not, yes, because practically everything has been taxed. And just as I said before, the only thing that is remaining to be taxed now is the air we are breathing. And it will soon be taxed.
But the government just is trying to generate revenue from different sources. I mean, is this the way to go? Multiple taxation?
Can you take something from an empty barrel? You want to take from where you have not actually put something into. You are bringing a lot of taxes here and there because you want to generate revenue, and there are no infrastructure to bring those things for the man to pay. Take, for example, you set up a business. You are expected to pay your company income tax, educational tax, pay all the taxes expected as a company. But for Christ's sake, there are no schools. The educational tax are supposed to take care of some of these things. There are no public schools for an average person to go. You are paying those things, they are not there. You have to send your kids to private school. Imagine a kindergarten, a nursery school child.
But the governor just sent his son to a public school.
One out of 10.
Which public school?
Which
what
public school?
Have you seen the school? Have you
been to the school?
Have you been to that school to see how public it is?
We saw pictures.
But that one is not a public school.
That's not a public school.
That's a private
that's
school.
A private public school.
Public school. When you talk of it, you see as it's raining now, the kids are just under the rain. We know what, look at a particular video that was trending of a guy that was saying, I will go to scan. They quickly had to intervene and put the new structure in place. We are paying so many taxes. You want to set up a business. You are the one to do the road by yourself. You are the one to provide the water. In some community, you are the one to provide your security. Everything. So what are you paying the taxes for? For me, if you want to increase the revenue base, put the infrastructure in place. Look at it. During the last era, people willingly pay to the state government in Lagos State because they saw some development happening, and they were ready to pay. But here we are talking of federal. There is nothing working. And while I was coming this morning, I entered into a dish and I cried for myself. I know what that will cost you to fix your car.
And taxes are supposed to be on luxuries.
You know some of these things.
Veronica is mineral, a luxury.
Well, it's becoming luxury now, but then we have to.
I hope they won't start taxing water.
We have to leave it at this
Just
point,
unfortunate.
gentlemen. Thank you so much, CKN, for coming. Thank you, Sesan Okunade, for coming on TVC Breakfast this morning. You're watching TVC Breakfast.